1 year later, I was in Boston, and I was now at a Harvard-affiliated hospital, learning to be an internist and endocrinologist, and totally 100% comfortable with the scene and happy. But then things started to happen. I started to feel the experience of stress myself, got into smoking, drinking, and all that. And after a while realized that I had become a superb technician who knew everything about the physical body, the machine that we call the human body, and a lousy healer because I knew nothing about the human experience. And there were other things happening in my life at that time, besides my own stresses. I was training in the field of endocrinology and neuroendocrinology, and we were, for the first time, identifying what people now really know as neurotransmitters and neuropeptides. And so we had a new technique. It was called radioimmunoassay. We could measure peptides. And it became obvious to us that these were the molecules of emotion. In fact, one of my colleagues, Dr. Candice Pert, she coined the expression molecules of emotion. Now we know some of these molecules. In fact, there are lots of them, and you're familiar with them. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, opiates. There are hundreds of peptides, which are protein molecules that are secreted in the brain, and they change when your emotions change. In the sense, wherever a thought goes, a molecule follows. And so for us, this was brand new stuff because nobody had actually identified these molecules before. And we were also looking at cells of the immune system. As you know, cells of the immune system, T cells, B cells, macrophages, they protect us from many diseases, including infections, types of cancer, the ravages of aging, degenerative disorders, inflammation. There's a whole cascade of things happens when we are attacked by pathogens or carcinogens. And these immune cells that we were looking at, they had receptors on their cell walls for the molecules of emotion that we were identifying. So your immune cells are constantly eavesdropping on your internal dialogue. There's somebody there who's having a conversation with themselves all the time. Tonight, I hope we can look at this person, whoever this person is. I hope we can look at the real you today. But I think whoever this person is, you'll agree that he or she or it never shuts up. The conversation goes on all the time. It's going on right now as you're evaluating me, agreeing with me, disagreeing with me. It goes on in your dreams. It goes on even in your sleep. And your immune cells are listening because they respond to the peptides that are secreted when you think. Now, what is even more interesting is that the immune cells can make the same peptides that your brain makes when you're having emotional experiences. That is an astonishing discovery, that your immune cells communicate with your brain and they speak, they have memory. Anybody will tell you this today. If you ask a good neurobiologist, what's the essential difference between the immune system and the nervous system, they'll tell you there is no difference. The immune system is a circulating nervous system. It has memory, it makes choices. When your immune cell looks at an invading pathogen, it has to decide, is this a friendly one or is this an enemy? Should I go after it? Should I leave it alone? I never met this guy before, but what did my grandfather think of him? Because the memories of the experiences of the immune cells are passed on to subsequent generations. So the immune system thinks. It's a conscious system. These immune cells are little conscious beings. They think, maybe not in English with an Indian accent, but they do think. And then we started to look elsewhere. And this really took on an amazing journey for all of us. My colleague, which I mentioned, Dr. Candice Burt, she went on to become the chief of brain chemistry at the NIH and later professor of brain chemistry at Georgetown University. And right now she heads a private firm which is looking at peptides for treating AIDS. She's in fact discovered a new peptide, a neuropeptide that's made in the brain that occupies the AIDS receptor site. So this has been a very interesting journey. But what we started to find is that as we looked elsewhere in the body, cells of the stomach or intestine found the same phenomenon. So today when you say, I have a gut feeling about such and such, you're not speaking metaphorically, you're speaking literally. Your gut makes the same chemicals that your brain makes when you think. In fact, I would suggest to you that you can trust your gut cells a little more because they haven't yet learned how to doubt their own thinking. I speak to people in various fields these days, in the field of neuroimmunomodulation, as it's called, and some of my cardiologists, biologists tell me that today they're finding out that about 70% of our heart cells are what are called neurocardiocytes. So even though the heart acts as a pump, it also secretes molecules of emotion, which means your heart is structurally different in different states of consciousness. So when you say, my heart is full of joy or compassion or love or peace, it has a different molecular structure than your heart is full of hostility or rage or anger. In fact, hostility is now considered the #1 risk factor for premature death from cardiovascular disease. The #1 risk factor, psychological risk factor for premature death from cardiovascular disease is what is referred to as cynical mistrust of others and free-floating hostility. So these are major breakthroughs that most people don't talk about, but they're not even recent. They've been coming through for the last 30 years, 35 years. Major breakthroughs, and the major breakthrough is there's no controversy about what people call the mind-body connection. Okay? In fact, your mind is not in your brain. Your mind is in all the cells of your body. Every cell of your body has a mind, and it communicates with all the cells of your body. In fact, my colleague, Dr. Candice Burt, who I've been quoting all evening, she used to say, your body is your subconscious mind. And very frequently, your body is the battleground where you're waging the wars with yourself. It doesn't have to be like that, but it seems it is. So this was a major breakthrough for us, and it's still developing. The story hasn't ended, because now we are looking at a deeper story. We have thoughts, we have a mind, we experience subjectivity, we experience memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires. We have fantasies, we have dreams, we have longings, we have hope. And these are all activities of our mind. But people are beginning to ask a more important question. What is the source of all this? Where does all this come from? If the mind is not in the brain, if the mind is not in the body, then where is the mind? And is it in fact an expression of a deeper part of ourselves, which great spiritual traditions have called the soul? In fact, do we have a soul? And if we do have a soul, then where is it? You know, scientists only recently have been asking these questions. In fact, if you have time, tonight after you go home, go to WashingtonPost.com and go to the On Faith section. And I have a 19-page article today on the Washington Post, which is a conversation with one of the most brilliant scientists in the world, a man called Hameroff, Dr. Stuart Hameroff, who has come up with the explanation, the mathematical explanation, and the explanation at the level of quantum physics, which says that consciousness or spirit is a fundamental activity of the universe, just like gravity is. And so check it out tonight. If you have time, go to WashingtonPost.com, go to the on-faith section. It's a dialogue with Dr. Stuart Hameroff, which I just posted this afternoon before coming here. And Dr. Stuart Hameroff is the colleague and co-author of what is called the Roger Penrose Hameroff theory of consciousness. Roger Penrose, Sir Roger Penrose, was the thesis advisor to Stephen Hawking. So you're getting a very important level of conversation going on, asking some of the deeper questions of our existence. Do we have a soul? What happens to us after we die? Does God exist? And if God exists, does he or she care about us? Is all of evolution an accident, or is evolution punctuated by creativity? Is there creativity in nature? So these are very important questions, as I said, that are being finally addressed not just by philosophers but by scientists. So let's take a little journey together. It was a long time ago that the Greek philosopher Heraclitus of Ephesus said, "No man steps into the same river twice, because it's never the same river and it's not the same man." He said that 2,500 years ago. Heraclitus was a contemporary of Buddha, by the way. They lived at the same time. Probably didn't know each other because we didn't have the internet and all that. So what did Heraclitus mean when he said you cannot step into the same river twice? It's never the same river and it's not the same man. Well, today we can see that your body, even though it appears to be an anatomical structure, it's more a process. That's why it's possible to reinvent the body. And I want to talk about that. But your body is a process that is in dynamic exchange with the elements and forces of the universe through physiological processes like eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, sensory experience through sound, touch, sight, taste, form, taste and smell, but also your inner world of thoughts and feelings and emotions. Even with one breath that you breathe in, you breathe in 10 to the power of 22 atoms from the atmosphere. 10 to the power of 22 means 10 followed by 22 zeros. With every breath that you breathe out 10 to the power of 22 atoms, which is a lot of stuff that comes out from your body every time you breathe in and out, not to mention all the other activities that I mentioned. And so every time you breathe out 10 followed by 22 zeros, these atoms have their origin in every cell in your body. So you're literally at the atomic level breathing out bits and pieces of your heart and kidney and brain tissue. And technically speaking, we're all intimately sharing our organs with each other all the time. The great American poet Walt Whitman once said, "Every atom that belongs to you as well belongs to me." Every atom that belongs. We are members of one body. We share the same breath. We are members of one energy field. We are members of one information field, and we may be part of a single consciousness. But in any case, 10 to the power of 22 atoms, recycling through your body and all the bodies that we know. In the last 3 weeks, a quadrillion atoms, quadrillion means 10 followed by 15 zeros, have gone through your body that have gone through the body of every other living species on this planet. So think of a tree in Africa, think of a squirrel in Siberia, think of a peasant in China, think of a taxi driver in Calcutta. You have stuff inside your body that was floating there only 3 weeks ago. In less than 1 year, you replace 98% of all the atoms in your body. So at the atomic level, you're recycling your stomach lining every 5 days, your skin once a month, your skeleton, which seems so hard and solid, but in a living organism, it's calcium and phosphorus and a few other elements that you could buy in a hardware store for $5, and you replace your skeleton every 3 months.